Have you ever pulled out of a drive-thru lane, taken a sip of that $5 iced coffee you look forward to every single morning, and immediately felt a wave of profound disappointment? It is watery, it tastes slightly burnt, and that fresh, glazed donut sitting in the bag next to you has the exact structural integrity of a damp sponge. You blame yourself. You think, maybe the barista had a bad day, or maybe my taste buds are just off this morning. But you keep going back, day after day, because that pink and orange logo or that green siren is practically woven into your identity as a functioning American adult. We have been conditioned to accept mediocrity disguised as a daily ritual, treating massive fast food corporations like trusted neighborhood friends while they quietly hollow out the very products we love. Today, we are stripping away the marketing paint. You will find out exactly how the American coffee and breakfast industry was hijacked by private equity firms and Wall Street boardrooms. I will show you the precise moment your favorite morning staples transition from actual food to highly engineered, cost-optimized commodities. We will break down the laboratory data, the supply chain shell games, and the legal battles launched by furious franchise owners who realized they were being forced to sell garbage. And make sure you stick around, because the most shocking calculated deception in the entire fast food landscape happens at the very end of our list, involving a brand you likely visit multiple times a week. Before we start naming names and dragging corporate executives into the light, we need to understand the basic mechanics of how a genuine coffee and bake shop is supposed to operate, versus the illusion you are being sold. In a real kitchen, a donut is a beautifully simple, highly volatile thing. It requires flour, yeast, fat, and a human being who wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning to mix dough, fry it in clean oil, and glaze it while it is still warm. The shelf life of that product is measured in hours. By mid-afternoon, a real donut begins to dry out because it lacks chemical preservatives. It is a labor-intensive, low-margin game, but it results in something that smells incredible from the parking lot and melts in your mouth. The corporate coffee machine hates this model because Wall Street demands predictable, infinite growth every single quarter. To a private equity firm, a skilled baker cracking real eggs and frying fresh dough is a massive financial liability. So, the industry invented a workaround, the centralized flash freeze system. Instead of baking on site, a massive factory hundreds of miles away mass produces millions of pastries, blasts them with industrial freezers, and ships them in cardboard boxes to your local drive-thru. The teenager behind the counter isn't a baker. They are a machine operator pressing a button on a high-velocity convection oven to reheat a frozen puck of dough. It is the culinary equivalent of buying a pre-printed canvas, tracing over it with a Sharpie, and selling it as an original oil painting. The deception runs even deeper when you look at the liquid gold fueling the whole operation. Coffee is a commodity, and like any commodity, there is a massive spectrum of quality. High-grade Arabica beans grown at high altitudes taste smooth, complex, and naturally sweet. Low-grade beans or heavily manipulated commercial blends taste bitter, flat, and sour. To hide the inferior quality of cheap beans, commercial roasters will intentionally over-roast them until they taste like charcoal, knowing that the average consumer is going to drown the cup in liquid sugar, artificial flavor pumps, and heavy cream anyway. The industry has effectively turned coffee from a brewed beverage into a delivery vehicle for high-fructose corn syrup, all while charging you a 300% markup for the privilege. When you look at a modern fast food breakfast menu, you are not looking at a list of food items designed to taste good, you are looking at a highly calibrated spreadsheet. Every single ingredient has been put through a process called zero-based budgeting, where corporate accountants demand that every microgram of fat, sugar, and protein justify its existence on the balance sheet. If an artificial flavor compound can replicate 85% of the taste of real vanilla at a fraction of the cost, the real vanilla gets discarded immediately. The quality declines so slowly and so systematically that your brain barely registers the change from year to year. You just wake up one day, look at a graying, rubbery breakfast sandwich that costs $7, and wonder when exactly the world went crazy. Let us dive headfirst into the graveyard of corporate cost-cutting, starting with the brands that have spent years systematically trading their quality for shareholder value. We will kick things off with a household name that sits on practically every highway exit in the United States. Dunkin'. Founded in Massachusetts back in 1950, Dunkin' built its entire empire on a simple, wholesome American promise. Fresh donuts baked on-site every single morning and hot coffee served fast. For decades, it was the working-class hero of breakfast. But if you have stepped into a Dunkin' recently, you know that the nostalgic scent of fresh dough and hot grease has been completely eradicated. What happened? In 2020, Dunkin' Brands was acquired by Inspire Brands, a massive private equity-backed conglomerate that also owns Arby's and Sonic. Under corporate pressure, Dunkin' dropped the donuts from its name, and they didn't just drop the word, they dropped the actual practice of baking. According to public operational blueprints and widespread franchisee documentation, the vast majority of Dunkin' locations shifted to a centralized kitchen model or rely on pre-frozen, par-baked goods shipped in by distributors. The Clean Label Project actually ran lab tests on various commercial breakfast chains and found that mass-produced, industrial baked goods are frequently loaded with synthetic preservatives to keep them shelf-stable during transport. When you bite into a Dunkin' glazed donut today, you can instantly feel the structural failure. It has a sticky, wet exterior and a dry, crumbly interior that feels like a sweet dinner roll left out in the sun. It costs nearly $2 for a single donut now, which is an absolute scam when you calculate the cost of production for a frozen, factory-made ring of dough at pennies per unit. As a legendary Boston area food critic noted in a recent regional culinary review, Dunkin' used to make food for people who worked with their hands. Now they make sugar delivery systems for people who don't care what they are swallowing. Verdict zinger, Dunkin' isn't a bakery anymore. It is just a drive-thru syrup refinery operating under a legacy name. If you already feel like checking your own kitchen counter right now, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because the corporate deception gets significantly harsher from here. Let us talk about Krispy Kreme. This is a brand that built an absolute cult following on the sensory experience of the hot light. When that red light was on in the window, you knew you were getting a hot yeast-raised glaze that literally dissolved on your tongue. The brand was acquired by Jab Holding Company, a European conglomerate that has quietly swallowed up a massive chunk of the American coffee market. To drive up volume and hit quarterly numbers, Krispy Kreme expanded aggressively out of its dedicated theater-style stores and flooded regional grocery chains like Kroger, Walmart, and Target with pre-packaged boxes of donuts stacked on cardboard pallets. Have you ever bought a box of Krispy Kreme donuts from a grocery store shelf at 4 p.m.? It is a depressing experience. Legendary glaze has completely liquefied into a slimy, translucent layer of wet sugar, and the dough has collapsed into a dense, gummy paste. Consumer reports and verified reviews on platforms like Trustpilot are filled with shoppers complaining that the boxed grocery store donuts taste stale on the exact same day they are purchased. You are paying a premium price for a premium memory, but you are receiving a stale, mass-distributed commodity item. Verdict zinger. Krispy Kreme turned their legendary hot glaze into a cold, sugary structural adhesive. Now let us move to the grocery aisle itself, where the corporate food scientists really let their dark side shine. Consider Entenmann's, an iconic American baking institution owned by Bimbo Bakeries USA, the largest commercial baking corporation in the country. Generations of Americans grew up with that classic white and blue box sitting on the kitchen table. But over the last decade, the ingredient list has devolved into a terrifying chemistry experiment. If you look at the back of a box of their famous rich frosted donuts today, you will not find real cream, butter, or high-quality chocolate. Instead, you are greeted by an army of hydrogenated palm kernel oil, soybean oil, high-fructose corn syrup, mono and diglycerides, and sodium acid pyrophosphate. The corporate accountants implemented a relentless zero-based budgeting strategy, swapping out expensive natural fats for highly refined, industrially stable seed oils that can sit in a hot warehouse for months without rotting. When you eat an Entenmann's donut now, it leaves a distinct, waxy film on the roof of your mouth that feels like you just chewed on a scented candle. Real fats melt at body temperature. Cheap, hydrogenated industrial palm oil does not. A verified consumer review on Consumer Affairs stated it perfectly. I bought these for my kids because I loved them as a child, but they taste like chemicals and plastic now. You are paying over $6 a box for a product that has been systematically stripped of its actual food value. Verdict zinger. Entenmann's took the home-baked heritage out of the box and replaced it with an industrial-grade waterproofing agent. That brings us to the absolute peak of the American morning routine, the most trusted, most culturally dominant coffee titan on the planet, Starbucks. This is the company that convinced the American public that spending $7 on a daily coffee was a necessary lifestyle choice. They created the concept of the third place, a cozy, community-oriented space between work and home. But that illusion has been shattered by a decade of aggressive corporate consolidation and operational restructuring. Starbucks shifted its entire focus from a premium coffee house to an assembly line drive-thru operation optimized for digital orders. Let us look at the food. Every single breakfast sandwich, wrap, and pastry you see in that beautifully lit glass display case arrives at the store frozen solid in plastic wrappers. The employees are explicitly trained to slice open the plastic, slide the frozen bacon, Gouda, and egg frittata into a high-powered TurboChef convection oven and heat it up in seconds. Investigative reports by independent food journalists have highlighted that the egg patties used in these fast food operations are frequently factory-blended mixtures containing modified cornstarch, citric acid, and xanthan gum to prevent them from turning into rubber when they are blasted with intense heat. The sensory experience is totally hollow. The cross-section of a Starbucks breakfast sandwich reveals an incredibly dry, uniform texture, with bacon that has the consistency of wet cardboard and a cheese layer that hardens back into plastic within 3 minutes of leaving the store. The cost per serving is outrageous. You are paying $7 for a reheated frozen puck that costs Starbucks less than 50 cents to source from a centralized processing facility. Even worse is what happened to the coffee beans. To maintain total consistency across tens of thousands of global locations, Starbucks roasts their core beans to an extreme dark profile. Independent coffee roasters and sensory experts frequently point out that this heavy roasting process burns away the delicate, natural flavor notes of the bean, leaving a uniform, bitter ash flavor that requires pumps of chemical syrup to make palatable. Former baristas have taken to Reddit and TikTok to expose the intense corporate pressure to hit drive-thru speed targets, forcing them to sacrifice drink quality entirely. Verdict zinger. Starbucks didn't build a better coffee shop. They built a corporate real estate empire that sells liquid dessert to people who are too tired to read the ingredient label. And now, what it was worth watching all the way through for. We have waded through the corporate sludge, the flash-frozen deceptions, and the private equity cost-cutting theater. It is time for the reward. There are still companies out there that treat breakfast and coffee as a craft rather than a spreadsheet. And the best part is that you do not need to hunt down an elite boutique in a major metropolitan area to find them. You can grab these straight from the shelves of your local Target, Whole Foods, or regional grocery stores. Let us start with the most accessible, mainstream savior of the grocery aisle. Peet's Coffee. Founded in Berkeley, California by Alfred Peet in 1966, this brand is effectively the godfather of craft roasting in America. In fact, the founders of Starbucks originally had to buy their beans from Peet's just to get started. While other massive brands went public and let private equity firms gut their sourcing, Peet's maintained an intensely strict quality control department. They commit to sourcing 100% top-grade Arabica beans and, more importantly, they are one of the very few massive commercial brands that explicitly prints a roasted on date directly on the bag rather than a vague Best By deadline. Sensory experts and professional importers regularly praise their Big Bang or Major Dickinson's blends for maintaining a deep, chocolatey flavor profile without a hint of that sour chemical acidity that plagues cheap commercial roasters. When you brew a pot of Peet's whole bean coffee at home, your entire house smells like a premium local cafe, not a burnt toaster. Price-wise, it sits beautifully around $10 to $12 for a 12-ounce bag. When you break that down, it translates to roughly 35 to 45 cents per cup. You are getting historic, meticulous craft quality for less than a tenth of the price of a watered-down drive-thru cup. The only real downside is that because they do not use heavy artificial preservatives, you actually have to finish the bag within a few weeks of opening it, which, let us be honest, is not going to be a problem. Tasting Table is show 1. If you want to take a massive step up into true specialty territory without leaving your standard grocery run, look for Stumptown Coffee Roasters, which is widely available at Target, Whole Foods, and high-end regional supermarkets. Originating in Portland, Oregon, Stumptown built its entire philosophy on direct trade, meaning they bypassed traditional commodity brokers to pay coffee farmers directly, often double or triple the fair trade baseline, in exchange for the absolute cream of the crop harvest. Their signature Hairbender or Holler Mountain blends are legendary in the specialty coffee world. The sensory experience here is an absolute revelation if you are used to fast food coffee. It hits your palate with intense notes of dark caramel, crisp citrus, and creamy milk chocolate. It possesses a heavy, velvety mouthfeel that leaves a clean, sweet finish rather than a bitter coating on your tongue. In blind taste tests conducted by culinary publications like CNET and Epicurious, Stumptown consistently outperforms commercial giants, with experts noting its incredible flavor clarity and structural integrity even months after roasting. It is more expensive, retailing between $14 and $16 a bag, which works out to about 50 to 60 cents per cup. Yes, it is a premium price for the grocery aisle, but you are buying completely uncompromised, world-class specialty beans. The downside is that it requires a tiny bit of effort. You will need a basic home grinder because buying these pre-ground completely defeats the purpose of their volatile, fresh flavor compounds. CNET finally, for the absolute pinnacle of uncompromised breakfast quality, we have to look at local independent bakeries and community co-ops. If you are going to buy a donut, a bagel, or a morning pastry, the single best financial and culinary decision you can make is to completely bypass the corporate grid. Walk into a local bakery where you can literally see the flour dust on the baker's apron. These independent shops rely on real butter, fresh eggs, unbleached flour, and traditional fermentation processes. When you buy a fresh, locally fried yeast donut or an authentic boiled bagel, the texture difference is astronomical. It has a crisp golden crust that crackles slightly when you bite into it, leading into a light, airy, complex interior that has actual structural integrity. It tastes like real grains and dairy, not synthetic vanilla flavor compounds and refined palm oil. A single artisanal pastry might cost you $3 to $4, which is slightly more than the frozen corporate alternatives, but every single cent stays directly inside your local economy, supporting a human being in your neighborhood rather than funding a quarterly dividend report for a private equity conglomerate on Wall Street. It is an honest price for honest food, and the sensory satisfaction means you will actually enjoy your morning instead of just fueling a caffeine dependency. Now let us lay down the practical blueprint so you can walk into any store in America and immediately spot the corporate garbage without an investigative journalist standing next to you. Here are 6 non-negotiable rules for buying your morning fuel. Rule number 1. Read the ingredient deck on your baked goods and look explicitly for refined palm oil, hydrogenated fats, and high fructose corn syrup. If the ingredient list reads longer than a high school chemistry textbook, put the box back on the shelf at Walmart or Kroger and walk away. Real baked goods require flour, sugar, butter, yeast, and eggs, nothing more. Rule number 2. When buying coffee beans, look for an explicit roasted-on date stamped on the bag, not a vague Best By or expiration date. A Best By date is a marketing loophole that allows corporations to keep stale, flavorless beans sitting on Target or Safeway shelves for up to a year. Freshness in coffee is measured in weeks, not months. Rule number 3. Avoid buying pre-ground coffee whenever possible. The moment a coffee bean is ground, its surface area increases exponentially, causing its volatile flavor compounds to oxidize and disappear within hours, leaving you with a flat, bitter powder. Spend $40 on a basic burr grinder at Costco or Sam's Club and grind your beans fresh every morning. Rule number 4. Treat any product that uses the word fresh as a primary marketing slogan with intense skepticism. In the fast food industry, freshly baked or always fresh almost always translates to flash frozen in a centralized manufacturing plant 6 months ago and reheated in a convection oven 30 seconds before it was handed to you. Rule number 5. If you are ordering at a drive-thru, avoid the complex blended frozen drinks and flavored syrups entirely. These items are highly engineered, high-margin industrial dairy substitutes and liquid sugars designed to mask the taste of low-grade, over-roasted coffee beans. Rule number 6. Look for certifications like 100% Arabica or regional designations like Single Origin on your coffee bags at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. While not a foolproof guarantee of elite quality, it ensures you are buying actual coffee beans rather than a cheap, high-yield filler crop like Robusta blended in by corporate accountants to hit a profit margin target. To summarize this entire investigation, the American breakfast industry has shifted from a hospitality business into a financial optimization machine. Your daily morning routine has been weaponized against you by massive private equity firms, international conglomerates, and corporate boardrooms that view your nostalgia as a line-item asset. They know you are emotionally attached to the logos, the colors, and the habits you grew up with, and they use that loyalty to slowly downgrade the quality of your food while charging you more for the privilege. To break out of this cycle, you need to make one fundamental shift in your thinking. Stop buying the logo and start buying the actual ingredient. When you refuse to pay $7 for a reheated frozen puck and a cup of burnt ash, the corporate deception loses all of its power. Thank you so much for investing your time with me today. You deserve honest food and honest value for the money you work hard to earn. If you have a friend or a family member who is currently trapped in that expensive, daily drive-thru routine, please share this video with them right now. They deserve to know exactly what they are swallowing every morning. I want to hear from you down in the comments section. Look inside your pantry or think about your morning run today. Which of these specific brands is sitting in your kitchen or your car right now? Let us get a real conversation started below. And make sure you hit that subscribe button before you leave, because next week we are moving into a different section of the grocery store to break down the terrifying reality of shrinkflation, showing you the exact ways American food manufacturers have quietly reduced the weight and nutritional value of your favorite pantry staples while quietly raising the prices. Vote with your wallet, check your labels, and remember that real quality doesn't need a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign to taste good.